Jamie and I, Glenn Suitor, and we are joined by Premier Brad Wall for Premier's Picks. What did you think of last week's Rough Rider game, Premier Wall? It's always nice to put a licking on the Stampeders.
It was outstanding. We were at Cyprus. We were camping, and there's something about a beautiful Saskatchewan evening, sitting around the campfire and listening to the game. And not so much the first half, maybe, but the second half was just it was great. So you could. The other nice thing about listening or watching a Rider game at a provincial park, at a campground, and Glenn, you need to know this. There's a lot of, I'm sure you do. There's a lot of televisions on, but there's radios too. You can hear the cheer kind of wave through the campground. You know when the Riders have scored. So, I have a quick question for Glenn about the broadcast. Can I do that?
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
You know, the best broadcast team for CFL football is Cuthbert and Suitor. And so I noticed there's been a change there. I think all fans have. So on behalf of fans, is that a permanent thing? Are they going to rotate that around, or how is that going to work this season on TSN?
I'm glad you asked, because I have had just a flood of Twitter questions and comments and people wondering the same thing. So it is actually a bit of a change in the schedule, only because of some personal requests, a couple being from me, just some family issues that I dealt with in the first few weeks of the season. And because of that, the schedule started to shift a little bit. But as of this coming week, I don't do the Rider game tomorrow, but Chris and I will be BC Edmonton, and then moving forward, Chris and I are together for the remainder of the season, including playoffs and Grey Cup.
I was going to ask about the Grey Cup. That is very good news. Thanks for that, Glenn. I had people, we were kind of chatting about it too, and so that's it's good to hear.
But there was a lot of fans asking, so I'm glad you asked.
Yeah, well, no, there were. It was campfire talk at the park, and I know football fans are talking about that too.
Now, when you camp, what are we talking about here, Premier Wall? Are you have the 8-man tent, or what's?
We're talking the hybrid camper. You know, the cabin. It's a cabin trailer thing, but it's got the canvas bunks that pull out.
Okay.
Yeah. So we went from tent to tent trailer to this sort of a hybrid, and I don't know. Someday I'd like to get to the point where we're not setting anything up.
You're just driving in, parking, and that's it. You're done.
Yeah, I kind of like that. Although I'll tell you what, it is a relationship building experience. As any of us who've camped know, renovations at your house, setting up the campsite, and you get through those things, and you're on solid ground.
That needs to be like a marriage, a test. Before you get married, you have to go camping together, and it has to be a good long trip, like a week long camping anywhere in Saskatchewan. Go out there, see if you can set up the tent without wanting to just cut ties right there. Without
a disagreement. I think it's a great idea.
Well, the other thing is, guys, when you sit with your son or daughter who may be just approaching teenage years, and it's tough to communicate sometimes, if you sit around a campfire long enough, they'll start talking. If you sit in a boat and fish long enough, they'll start talking, and you can really open it up. And I've loved it. I've grown up the same way, so I love it.
Glenn, you are exactly right. There's after a while, the earbuds kind of come out, and before you know it, shock of shocks, you're having a conversation. It's great.
Well, let's bring on the King, because we need to mock him. The King, Gary Nickel, 0-4, which means Premier Wall, he had a gimme for Winthorpe, the Rider Gnome. That's Rider Gnome, the capitalized Winthorpe. 4-0. The Gnome went 4-0 this week. So
it's win, all caps, Winthorpe. There, he's a smart gnome. Or it could say something actually a little bit more about the King, about date night, than it does about Winthorpe.
Hey, I like to think that I really nailed it, guys. I really wanted to get Winthorpe out to a hot start, and I feel like this will make it a little more exciting for all of the listeners to watch me chase from behind and be the underdog, and then finish it off with a big win at the end of the year.
So the current standings, we have Winthorpe, the Rider Gnome, of course, replacing Angus, who the Premier left in PEI. It's a 6-2 record. The Premier's second at a 5-3 record, and of course, the King and Winthorpe go opposite, which is a great benefit for the Gnome. So the King is 2-6.
Oh, man, I'm on fire.
We're going to drop you to Prince pretty soon here, Gary, if you're not careful.
Jester or minstrel.
If it's this consistent every week in terms of what happens to Winthorpe when he picks opposite of Gary, I want to know what the Kings lottery numbers are for this week.
Oh, well, I have to hold on to those as insurance, I guess, eh?
Well, let's get to the picks. Okay, Premier Wall, the first game of the week is Saskatchewan-Toronto. You're picking the Riders, but how much? It doesn't count, it doesn't matter, but how much do you think the Riders are going to beat the defending Grey Cup champions?
I think it's a touchdown. I think, I'll take 7 points.
The King.
And I hope someone writes it down so we can. We need to review.
Yeah, I'm putting it. I'm putting 7 in brackets next to your pick.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take the Argos here.
Winthorpe will go 1-0 so far this week by getting the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Premier Wall, we have Calgary, Kevin Glenn, the starting quarterback against Anthony Calvillo in Montreal, who looked terrible last week against Winnipeg.
I know. And you know what? Because it's Glenn, I guess it might be tempting to say, well, the Alouettes will get things together now, and whatever disagreements Calvillo's having with his old coordinator will get solved. But I'm going to go with the Stamps. I think there's trouble in Montreal.
That's 2 weeks out of the 3. Of course, last week you couldn't pick the Stamps because they played Saskatchewan, but the other 2 weeks you've now picked Calgary.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yikes. I can't do that. I'm going to go with the Owls, even though it looks like they're really missing Mr. Trestman. But overall, I just can't take Calgary. You're right, Jamie.
Part of the reason date night is that the reason you like Trestman is that he's a former old coordinator for the Oakland Raiders, and deep down, you love anything really. You like the Oakland Raiders and people that were connected to them.
Well, sure, that works.
The King will let you start with the Winnipeg at Hamilton.
Even after the big, ginormous win that Winnipeg pulled off last week, I still have to take Hamilton just because it's Winnipeg.
Premier Wall?
I watched the game as a part of it, sort of outdoors a little bit, and Hamilton just looked terrible. I mean, so is Fantu's playing? Not that that'll make that huge of a difference.
Glenn, do you know if Fantu's playing? I haven't heard that one.
I haven't heard definitively, but it sounds like he's practicing, so I would think he will.
And they just look terrible. So I'm going to go with the Bombers. I think Buck Pierce is going to have another good game.
And finally, BC at Edmonton. Premier Wall.
I get to go first?
Yep.
Lions.
How am I supposed to gain ground with options like these? All right, you know what, Mr. Premier? I'm gonna join you. I'm gonna go ahead with BC as well. Let's do this one together.
Perfect.
Well,
it's me and you, Gary, against the Gnome.
Yes, I was going to say, I just gave you the kiss of death.
I don't like our chances.
The Gnome has Saskatchewan, Calgary, Winnipeg, and Edmonton.
Right.
I like the Gnome's chances again this week. Premier Wall, as always, it's a pleasure.
You guys, thanks very much for the time. Enjoy the games this week. Take care.
And the King, way to embarrass yourself last week.
Nailed it again.
Yeah, absolutely.